Ladies and gentlemen, up next, today's discussion is about resilient notifications with Sean Falzon. Also, we just want to make everybody aware of the fact that Sean is the winner here of the Nagios Log Server Dashboard Competition. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Give him a big round of applause.
That would have been better if Eric was in here. I don't think he is. So thank you everyone for coming along today. This is my second time presenting. As mentioned, my name is Sean Falzon. I come from Australia, so I speak Australian English. I apologise in advance if my accent's a bit difficult for some people or if I use words that are a bit confusing. Try and keep them to a minimum, but there are a few. I guess last year I presented here, and I was just wondering, who saw me present last year? Yeah, a few people? 2? 3? Okay. Anyone watch it on YouTube? No? Good. Please. No comments on YouTube. Thank you. This year we're going to talk about resilient notifications, which is, I guess, a term that I coined to try and describe what it is that we do with our notifications where I work. So the notifications are important. Okay? I want to make that clear to everyone. Notifications are important, but it can also be very annoying. There's nothing worse than having notifications come through that you don't want. And the other thing with notifications that people tend to overlook is that if you're monitoring a system that you use for communications, but you send your notification through that system, you're probably on the wrong track. You're monitoring it because you expect it to fail. You're not monitoring it because you want to show you've got 99.99% uptime. You're monitoring it because you expect it will fail and you want to know and you want to fix it. So, sending notifications when something happens is natural behaviour. Everything in nature pretty much does it. So, from birth, humans like to notify people when things have happened. So this is a photo of my son. He's crying in the photo, of course. I'm not sure why I took the photo. I didn't make him cry for this presentation. But it's a good example of, as humans, we want people to know when things are going wrong. And if we can't deal with it, we want to let others know. And Nagios works the same way. So from this, we can tell he's not happy. Being his parent, I can tell what's going on. My daughter, who's 3, saw this photo when I was preparing the slides 15 minutes before I left home. She says, "Daddy, why is Luca crying?" I said, "Well, because he was upset." She says, "Well, why isn't Mummy there?" So she knew that look on his face was a cry that meant he needed his mummy. Apparently I wasn't good enough. My daughter knew that. But yeah, I'm sure my wife came along and sorted him out. Which brings me on to humans have always been trying to find a better way to send notifications. Throughout history, cave paintings were a good way for letting people know if there was a viable game in the area or a danger. Then we had smoke signals. Most cultures throughout history have used smoke signals through, notify people of pending doom, war, something like that. Then we moved into more technology. We had Telegram. It was a great service. You could send a message around the world with telegrams. Telephone. You could get someone in their house. Mobile phones. That's an Australian word. If you're American, it'll be a cell phone. If you're European, it'll be called a handy. Something else in Australia. But the real peak of notifications with technology was SMS. Short message service. Send a really succinct message to somebody and they had an annoying beep. And that's pretty much where notification technology sort of peaked. Surely there's better ways to do it now, but that was really cool. I remember when I had my first mobile phone and SMS notifications came in Australia. We were sending, I was just out of high school, sending text messages to friends and to girls that you liked. It's a lot easier than calling on the phone and being embarrassed. So, most popular notifications. Now, this isn't a fact, this is a guess. So I might go show of hands. Who uses email for notifications? Yeah? Not everyone, but most people. Who uses SMS? Yeah? Can I just see again though, the people who use email and SMS combined? Okay. So it is pretty popular. And obviously there's other ways. And these are my favourite ways of doing notifications. Email, SMS, voice, and service desk tickets. I'll talk a lot about voice throughout this presentation, so I'll skip over that briefly. But service desk tickets. Almost forgot it when I wrote this presentation because it's become so natural for our organisation. We have an event that happens. Could be a disk is filling up on a database server, so we get a warning. Nagios notices it, fires off a script. The notification command is executed. Instead of sending a message to a person or an SMS or an email or something like that, it uses a web API to submit a service desk ticket. And what that does is it puts it into our workflow, which we use for managing any sort of problem within anything to do with IT at our company. Which means that it gets managed through the same system that we would manage if someone complained about anything that was broken. Nagios is treated like a person, like a customer, for our help desk people. So, just talk briefly about SMS. I mentioned before I thought it was, I guess, the peak of technology. For a while anyway, not anymore. They're simple to send. Everyone's pretty aware of that, I'm sure. From Nagios, the most common ways would be through a web or an email gateway, or using a network-connected modem. Maybe a USB-connected modem if you're using a physical server. Anyone who's talked to me about how to run notifications with SMS, they would know that I don't like USB-connected things, so I like to have everything in a virtualized environment. I like to have resiliency and redundancy everywhere, and USB doesn't provide that, in my view. And it's purely my view, and everyone can have their own opinions. So, cons for SMS. This is my favourite phone. There's no way to know if it was received, or no reliable way as part of the actual standard. There's no way to tell if it was read, and that's probably the biggest problem with sending notifications. You need to know the person's read it. And it cannot be automatically forwarded by your phone network. So in Australia, we use purely GSM phones. We have for many years now. Before that, we had CDMA as well. And I know in the US, you have a mix of CDMA and GSM. And most countries in the world are GSM. And GSM standard allows for forwarding a phone using a simple code. Can't remember off the top of my head. I should put it in here. But it's something like #21 hash, the number you want to send it to, hash, something like that. And it will tell the network to forward your phone. It doesn't forward the SMS message though. So if you have your system set to send the SMS message to a person who's on call, and that person's not available, and you don't have a big set of staff, and you don't have someone available to change it, that person cannot remotely do it without having to log on to your system. And if they're not available and they need to change over to someone else, chances are they're not going to be in a position to be able to log onto the network. So, what's the answer? There are commercial products out there. Some can be quite costly. Others are free. And I think everyone who's here should have probably heard about some free ones, and some that I picked out of the blue, and these aren't the only ones. A Push Bullet and Telegram. They're great, they work well, but they're free. And when you get something for free, you don't get a guarantee. You don't have an SLA with that company. You have no recourse to seek financial damages off them if they fail to do what they say they're going to do. But you should use it, because it's probably better than SMS. Then there's apps like ANAG, which I used when I first deployed smartphones within the organisation. You know, Android phones, ANAG. It was a brilliant idea. But it has its problems. So it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. And as a result, we don't use it anymore. But I love voice. Anyone who's seen me around the conference, especially at the end of the day, perhaps with a beer in my hand, would know I love to talk. But I like to hear people talk as well. I hate it when people SMS or text me because I hate typing on my phone. I still think, we just talk. So we made our Nagios installation do the same thing. It calls us. These benefits are you can listen to your voice message in your car. So I'm driving down the highway, which I do a lot because I live in a rural area, so I spend a lot of time in the car. I do about 40,000 kilometres worth of driving for work every year. And the phone call will come in, and I'll see on the on-screen display in my car that it's our Nagios system calling me. I answer it, and it reads out the alert. And it's a really terrible voice, the way I've designed it. But I know it's an alert, and I can make out her voice. We've talked enough on the phone, I can work out her accent. And because we're using a voice system, we can acknowledge it. And we can tell the voice system, we know what's going on. So the real benefit of voice is that most businesses have invested money over the last 30 years on making sure their phone systems work. The company I work for has 13 offices across the state of Victoria. Of those, we have 4 sites that have modern phone systems, so they're all IP-based solution. I won't talk about the brand because it's not about them, it's about the concept. So they have a cluster, they all talk to each other. They all have ISDN because SIP as a service is not very popular in Australia, but ISDN is very reliable. It's a business grade service and it's something that we can get in rural areas. And these places are very remote, rural areas. 2 of them are in Melbourne, but still the others are in rural areas. So we use ISDN. We can use SIP with this as well, and that's the beauty of it. In the phone system, we can set a value that says, if we can't get an outside line through ISDN, use another pathway. And in this, we would say, use, site C's ISDN to get out if you can't get out site A's ISDN. Because it's all about resiliency, and that's what we designed our phone system for. This phone system was designed when our company had very poor IT infrastructure. We had servers sitting on the floor in the finance office because the finance department had gone and bought a new finance system and they wanted a new server. And that's what they thought they could do. After the phone system was put in, we saved a lot of money. We upgraded to a full virtualized environment, refitted out all the IT infrastructure, and that's when I started. I wasn't involved in the shenanigans before that. But one of the things that I did notice when I first started the company was they had this great phone system. And we were doing monitoring, and we had a lot of trouble. My predecessor, he had decided that another application was the gold standard of system monitoring. And that might be a hint as to what that product was. I remember, I think 4 weeks after I started, I got 300 SMS messages on a Sunday because we had a scheduled network outage between our head office and our second biggest office. And the monitoring system was at the second biggest office because my boss worked out of the second biggest office and he'd set it up there. So it lost communication with all of our servers. So it sent a notification for every single system that was down. And it sent that over and over and over and over again. And it hadn't been configured to have a mechanism to turn it off remotely. I had to VPN in, but I couldn't VPN in because the Radius servers were offline. I turned my phone off. So, I'll skip that. I should have probably said that earlier. So as I mentioned before, you can forward calls with voice, with GSM. You can also forward calls with your office phone system, which is what we do. We sent Nagios to make a call through Asterisk to the internal number, which then we can forward to anyone's mobile phone. So it's easy to change the roster. You can acknowledge voice calls. So we use Asterisk uses a call file, it has a call dial plan, calls the person, they press 2 to acknowledge. Then Asterisk knows the person has, got the message and it stops calling them until Nagios tells it to call them again. So how does it work? It's a marriage between Asterisk and Nagios for us. We have one virtual machine that has Nagios and Asterisk installed. Originally we thought that won't work. Surely there'll be a lack of memory. But Asterisk doesn't use that much memory if you're not doing too much with it. And Nagios is extremely memory efficient. No, it is. It's not too bad. So it works really well. Asterisk doesn't need that much, really. So it works well, and it doesn't have to be on the same machine. But on ours it is. So when the event fires off, Nagios runs the notification event, runs the notification command, which generates 2 files. One is the call file, which is a plain text file, if anyone's not familiar with Asterisk. It's just a file that basically says, Asterisk, please execute this dial plan, use this number, and play back this file when you do that. It also generates a synthetic voice file, which is just a WAV file encoded, in our case, with GSM, because that's what we use for communication with our other phone system. So this just shows that Asterisk then will call the on-call person. If that person doesn't answer, it goes to their voicemail. It doesn't assume that the person has answered the call, even though they did answer the call, and it did play back the message into their voicemail system. It waits for the acknowledgement. If that person doesn't answer within the set time period, it calls a higher up manager, or in our case it would call someone who's not in IT, because we don't have that many IT people. It calls a corporate duty officer, who then would be aware of what to do, which is call me. So, acknowledgements, as I mentioned. You can acknowledge it through the voice system. We have it then tell Asterisk not to call the person again. We don't tell it then to tell Nagios to acknowledge the alarm has been dealt with, because we know that the message is garbled at best. But we want the person to go into Nagios and see the parent-child relationship between what's gone wrong and what's been notified. They might not be evident to the operator. Our on-call people range in skill levels. We have people who are very good at IP networks. We've got people who are very good at applications. But they all are on call. But they all share the on-call role, because we don't have a huge IT team, as I mentioned. So they log on to Nagios, they see on the interface what's up, what's down, what's unreachable, because we don't notify an unreachable. If they don't answer, what happens? If they don't deal with the problem, what happens? And this is something that I think a lot of people forget, that Nagios has escalations built in. Albert Einstein. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if we're going to keep on notifying the same person over and over again, and they don't deal with the problem, why are we doing this? Why have we configured our system to monitor something and notify people, but we don't actually expect them to actually ever do any work about it? And I'm guilty of this. This is a screenshot from my Outlook. Those who use Outlook, I know not everyone here does. The number in blue indicates the number of unread emails in that folder. This folder is set to delete after 2 weeks, or fortnight, as we say in the English-speaking world. So 681 notifications. And I looked at it when I took the screenshot this morning. And I thought, geez, something must have gone wrong. Yeah, there's some stuff. There's some stuff that needs to be dealt with. But this is not how we find out about these problems. This is me as the manager receiving a copy of every single notification that anyone gets from Nagios. And I keep a copy of it. It's really handy as a manager to get this, because you can just sort it in your email by the subject. We sort it by the subject has the host name and then the service name. So because of that, I can sort it and see if there's a pattern. Is the backup causing problems with CPU on SQL? Is the Exchange backup taking way too long? Is it taking longer than it would have previously? That then lets me look at the time periods in Nagios and let people know if there's a problem. Use multiple methods. This leads towards the resiliency side again. So I mentioned voice was resilient, but I don't trust it. I use SMS. I use voice. I use SMS through web gateway because we have really reliable internet in my work. We have multiple fibre and copper links between offices. We have multiple internet connections from different providers. But what we don't have is very good mobile phone coverage. Our head office is in a rural area. We have a single cell phone tower, as you would say here, covering my office. If I had a GSM modem, it's very likely that it wouldn't be able to send an alert when there was a bushfire or something in the local area, which would affect our services. So we use multiple methods. Another problem to think of when you're thinking about making your notifications resilient. People and on-call rosters are the problem. So if I had $1 for every time someone on our roster was unavailable at the last minute and had to swap with somebody, I'd be quite rich. It's usually me that's unavailable. I usually ring up somebody in the last minute on the Friday afternoon and say, yeah, I forgot to mention that my wife wants me to go shopping on the weekend in Melbourne, so I'm not really going to be available. Is there any chance you could cover for me? It's a double-sided coin. I sort of want them to say no, so then I have to say to my wife, oh, sorry. I'm on call. Yeah, and it just works out that usually when it's dinner with my mother-in-law, I can't get anyone to cover me. So we change it at the last minute. And for us, it's an easy change. We just simply tell the local extension not to forward to my phone, we tell it to forward to his. The way we're doing it previously would have basically required reconfiguring Nagios, reloading the config, which sounds big, but it's not that big a deal. You can build web interfaces to do it, you can find ones that do it, but this is easier for us. So I mentioned escalating before. I probably jumped the gun a bit. I do that a bit when I do presentations because I like to talk, as I mentioned, which is why voice is good. But it's in the slides, so if you do want to download it later, it's there. Excessive notifications. This is a huge problem. My guys, like I mentioned, they're not all experts in everything. They all have their special fields. Some people are just support, they just do help desk. And they like to know about things that are going on, and they're part of the on-call roster. So they get notifications. But if they don't understand these notifications and they start ignoring them, and they get too many, then the ones that are important they're going to ignore. So it's important to plan what you're going to send people. Okay? We don't want to make sure that they're missed. We don't want to notify when things are unreachable. It's, in my view, extremely poor practice. You notify for the thing that's down, that's causing the unreachable, by all means. But when your Nagios, or NagViz in our case, shows all purple, there's no point telling people that it's down. If your router that links the entire section of your network goes offline, just tell them that. Don't send hundreds of notifications, make it look like a Christmas tree on your dashboard or whatever you're doing. It's not necessary. So, what other solutions are there? So, as far as notifying people through methods other than voice or SMS, there are plenty of systems out there which would let you log onto a system and select who's on call, and they work well. And there's some good paid products out there on the web, and if you do a quick Google search, you'll usually find one. They require access to web interface, which is so easy to do. And I recommend it if you don't want to go through the rigmarole of what I've done. Think about one of these solutions rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. Leverage off the good work that other people have done. They've put it out there, and they would like to take your money, and that you should give it to them if it's easier for you. So my preferred way, as I mentioned, using the corporate phone system for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. One thing that I didn't mention earlier was remote hot desking. So we have extensions on our phone system that don't necessarily really exist. And we can call into the phone system from our cell phones, mobile phones, handies, and log on. And then my extension appears on my mobile phone without me trying to do anything. And there's like various phone providers have got various ways of doing it, smartphone apps to do it. But what that means is if you're signed into that extension, all of a sudden it's there. So have a look at what your phone system can do. I guess it's a message I'm trying to get out there, because you've already paid for that. You already own that. Get some more value out of it. And always, pick the right tool for the job. Do we want to be interrupted with a loud notification type for issues that can happen frequently but only matter when they are sustained? No, probably not. So in my view, we don't do voice after hours during the week, because the way our business operates, it's not necessary. And voice is really annoying. It will get people out of bed. I can sleep through SMSs all day long. I can't sleep through my phone ringing all night long. And don't rely on smartphones. Such a bad idea. If you're doing SMS, voice, email, using an app to send you notifications and make sure people get them, and you have a person with a smartphone, they're going to get them all on the one device. It's a really bad way to go. And I really recommend people check out things like the Telegraph. Yeah, because it allows you to have these things on your computer, on your phone, on your smart TV, if you have an Android smart TV. So I've got some resources here. Two important ones, the first two. And if you look at it on YouTube later, you'll be able to get them. They link to the Nagios manual. So notification escalations are available on the Nagios core. So there's a manual page about it. And status and reachability is something else that people should probably read up about. If you want scripts, Exchange. That's where you get them. If you want my scripts for asterisks or anything like that, I'm happy to share them. I'm not very proud of the way I've written it, so I'm not going to just put it out there on the web. But I'm happy to share with anyone who wants them. Just don't critique my coding style. I'm not a coder, but I can hack it together. So I guess, any questions?
Feel free to put your hand up in the air. I'll come by with the microphone.
It's a good question. And I guess that is almost all my photos have come from Minnesota. Most of them were taken by me. This one was taken by Rob Hassing. This was his breakfast at Hell's Kitchen in Minneapolis. It is sausage bread. Yeah, sausage bread. So it's what I would normally call fruit loaf, but also has sausage in it. It's delicious. I had it last year when I was here. Yeah, and it is banana peanut butter, and I think it's just whipped butter on the other one, so it's really good. All the photos in mine are all from Minneapolis, with the exception of my son, didn't bring him, and the Nokia phone. It was the only one I grabbed off. And Albert Einstein also, were the only ones that I didn't grab. So, yeah, but all the rest are Minneapolis. So.
A quick one, I guess. We do use asterisk in our environment also, doing other things for notifications, custom scripts. Can you explain a little bit more about how asterisk is actually stopping the notifications? Nagios will continue to send these at the interval you specify, but the asterisk is actually the piece that said, don't dial, I already know I called him.
Asterisk won't do that. The way we've configured it, we want asterisk to call them back. If they don't log on to our system and look at the Nagios overview screen and acknowledge the issue inside of Nagios, we do not want asterisk to stop calling the person. So it'll stop for a period of time, between the time when Nagios would do the repeat notification. So for us, that would be 15 or 20 minutes, depending on the event, or maybe it could be 3 hours, depending on the problem that we're notifying them about. And then it calls them again. And the things we're calling people about are important. Network outages, major server failures, not things like disk getting full. It's something we don't call people about. Like, pick the right tool for the job. Yeah.
Great question. Anyone else?
There's one down here.
What's your plan for the future? Because PSDN, ISDN is going out. Mm-hmm. They don't produce it anymore.
Yep.
At least in Denmark, we don't supply it anymore for people.
Okay. Yep. So we're going for a similar thing in Australia. We're having all our PSDN lines pulled out and fibre put in.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll be moving to fibre. I'm not sure about every country how they deliver SIP lines, but in Australia, I guess the preference is the provider would put a dedicated line in just to deliver SIP, which sort of sounds counterintuitive, but for a large business grade SIP installation in Australia, that's how they would prefer to do it. But outside of that, using SIP over an internet connection is viable. It's just a matter of making sure you have resiliency. Multiple internet connections, preferably from different providers, spaced apart, and using a different connection between offices is how we do it, and that would work really well. Outside of that, GSM gateway is a good way to go for making calls as an emergency through a phone system. So we have a GSM gateway that we tested. We weren't very happy with it because of our location, but it would provide a SIP trunk for the phone system. You can make a call through it, and it just makes it through the mobile phone network for us. And that's also a really good option for a backup network connection for the phones.
Not wanting to take too much time, but
Sure.
I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out I work for Victor Ops. We're one of the commercial companies that feels like we solve these problems that you mentioned. If anybody's curious, I'm happy to talk to anybody out in the hallway about it.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments, questions?
This must be the first thing that I've been to where Eric has been in the crowd and didn't ask a dozen questions. Yeah, I didn't realise he was here earlier when I said he wasn't here, so he must have snuck in. No other questions? It's actually not finished. I've got more slides. So I don't know if anyone to my one last year paid attention, but yeah, same thing. So there's one thing to take home from this, is that notifications are important, but some things shouldn't be interrupted unless it's really important. So thank you everyone for coming today.